Good afternoon, everybody. We will start within a minute. Almost 30 guests and participants already joined with us, and we'll start it timely so that we can finish it also within the time frame. Thanks for joining with us, and definitely this is our pleasure to welcome all of you, especially SANEM and World Vision conducted this research, the role of women's economic empowerment in the Bangladesh economy, which is one of the critical as well as urgent needs to know by all of us, so that during this pandemic and after this pandemic, even for the long-term development of our country, we can plan from different perspectives, and different stakeholders are invited here to know and learn, as well as seeking their support guidance too in this webinar. And this is an opportunity for us to welcome all of you for your timely joining, as well as your contribution is always welcome. So this is time now. Let me once again introduce, as well as I will request all of you to introduce in the chat box so that we can know each other from the chat box, because a good number of guests from different organizations, like we have invited almost 9 university professors, lecturers, 16 NGOs, national, international NGOs, 6 banks from different interest, particularly those who are having some sort of program focusing on the women, in addition to donor and UN organization like DFAT, USAID, Caritas Asia, as well as I can say ADB, World Bank, Bangladesh Bank, government. Particularly we have engaged and also invited some of the guests from the different department. I'm not going to share all the names, but this is an opportunity to welcome on behalf of SANEM and World Vision Management. So let me start formally of this webinar. My name is Chandan Gomez. I'm a Senior Director for Operations and Program Quality, World Vision Bangladesh. And also our National Director, Suresh Bartlett, who already joined with us, along with some other colleagues. And SANEM, there are many, not many, at least a few, the top level SANEM expert. They already joined with us. And formally, we will start with the welcome as well as the presentation and some panel discussion. There are few discussants among many, but it is not limited. We have some open discussion. During that time, those who are willing to suggest or willing to give any inputs, you are most welcome during the open discussion. But my request would be, let us make very specific suggestion or ask clarity so that we can finish it within the timeline. So having said that, let me welcome all of you once again, and also start this webinar with the objective of this webinar, particularly the prime objective of this webinar is to engage the external experts to know and to learn and to apply some of these research findings within their periphery or their portfolio, because research is a document which can be multiplied. Maybe SANEM and World Vision did it, but we love to multiply it externally, and also internally we love to integrate some of the findings into our regular program. Therefore, there was 3 prime objectives of this research. First objective was to learn and understand the way women's economic empowerment contributes to the economy. And second was assess the extent of some World Vision Bangladesh interventions in enhancing women economic empowerment. And the third one was identifying a set of targeted policy frameworks for women economic empowerment in Bangladesh. These are 3 prime objectives of this workshop, of this research. And World Vision, maybe you are aware that World Vision is working across the Bangladesh, more than 34 districts. And we have 2 types of funding stream. One is grants project, another is sponsorship project or sponsorship fund. And intentionally, we have added 2 grants project under this research. One is Navojatra, New Beginning, which is supported by USAID. This project is running extreme south, and we called it NSBC, Nutritional Sensitive Value Chain Project. It is supported by DFAT, Australia. So this 2 project was also under this research. And in detail, definitely SANEM expert will share. Therefore, I am not going to detail out here, but rather let me first of all just share the names of the discussion as well as the presenter. Just after my objective sharing, there will be summary presentation of this whole research. This will be presented by Dr. Saima Haq Bidisha, Professor, Department of Economics, Dhaka University, and Mahatabuddin, Lecturer, Department of Economics, University of Dhaka, and Research Economics of SANEM. Then there will be 5 key discussions based on the presentation. Musammat Nasima Begum, Member Secretary, Socio-Economic Infrastructure Division, Ministry of Planning. Then Gunjan Dalakati, SME Development Specialist of ILO Office, Dhaka. Then Dr. Sanjid Akhtar, Associate Professor, Department of Women and Gender Studies, University of Dhaka. And Laila Farjana, Senior Category Head, Marketing, Unilever, Bangladesh. And then Mehazabin Ahmed, Program Coordinator, UN Women, Bangladesh. And after the panel discussion, based on the discussion, some remarks will be made by Dr. Selim Raihan, Professor, Department of Economics, University of Dhaka, and Executive Director of SANEM. Then we will open the floor. Each and everyone can raise your hand, or you can put your question to the chat box. Our researchers, especially Dr. Saima Haq, Mahatabuddin, and also Dr. Selim Raihan sir, can reply some of the question queries. And World Vision, obviously, if it is related to World Vision, our national director, myself, and other colleagues definitely can reply. And obviously, we welcome all of your suggestion and positive notes. After open discussion, the session will be concluded by the closing remarks by Suresh Bartlett, World Vision Bangladesh National Director. So this is the schedule of today's 2 hours discussion. However, let me apologize first of all. Our first discussion, Mosammed Nasima Begum, Member Secretary, Ministry of Planning. She have a urgent and important meeting with the government. Therefore, she requested us to allow her just before sharing, because we shared the summary report to everyone. Therefore, I would request all of you to allow Madam Nasima Begum so that she can put her remarks on this research. May I kindly request Mosammed Nasima Begum, Madam, to share your opening remarks on this research. Over to you, Madam.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen present in today's research finding sharing session. I sincerely thank SANEM and World Vision for conducting this research on a very important topic, namely role of women's economic empowerment on the economy of Bangladesh, and giving me the opportunity to say a few words in front of you. As you have mentioned, I have another meeting at the Parliament, which is the Parliamentary Standing Committee meeting with the Minister of Planning. That's why I sought to speak earlier than my schedule, and you have granted me. Thank you for that. And there are many, I know that there are many learned speakers, and the time allotted for them is very short, so I'll be very brief. At this point, I must say that the research topic is very wisely chosen and timely. It examines the impact of women's economic empowerment on the economy of the country, where women constitute about half of the total population of the country. According to BBS data of 2017, women folk comprised 36.3% of the total labor force of the country, but 92% of these women are engaged in informal sector. That means only 8% is engaged in formal sector. According to SANEM GED survey 2018, only 14% of these women earn from their employment. This data clearly shows how vulnerable our women segment of the country is. The research has a set of very realistic findings, which I have found from reading the executive summary. For the time constraint, I'll focus on only two findings. Firstly, an effective and sustainable collaboration is direly needed between the government of Bangladesh and the private sector to increase and improve women's economic participation. We know that sustainable development or improvement in any area demands proper need assessment and making a master plan and implementing it with time-bound action plan. If we, the government, sincerely wishes to see the 50% segment of the population to meaningfully contribute to the economy, then the policymakers, that is us, need to be more serious to see this master plan in place and in action. Secondly, another findings that I have found here, and that I agree fully, male perception towards women's economic participation is gradually improving, you have mentioned. And actually, it cannot be denied that male perception is very important, and it is a powerful influencer for determining the level of women's economic participation in the country's economy. The reasons shown here is like that. So society realizes that families will be more solvent and they'll be more well off if both men and women actually together earn and contribute to the household, that is the family. And this is my own perception. You may not agree with me, that I feel that the male segment, that is men, our brothers, they feel that they'll be less burdened with the family expenditure and other familial hassle if their partner, that is the woman, actually earn for the family. This is my own feeling. Okay, one thing that I cannot actually help mentioning here in this context, that as I go through the document, that is the executive summary, I found that we have mentioned several times the donors. I must say here that actually donor in the government development literacy, it is very least used these days. almost it is non-existent. This word donor, we usually use development partner like this. So I will request to actually, because actually you know that Bangladesh is no more in that position to take donation from any country. We are taking loans, but that is getting harder and harder these days with the recognition of our middle income countries status. So actually we don't use the word donor anymore. Now I like to comment on some of the recommendations. Those are I found very pragmatic and implementable, and it is the high time that these are implemented in full but not partially. Especially the bullying and harassing women at workplace need to be stopped once for all. Side by side, providing a safe, secure, and congenial environment for women to work. Besides, sufficient childcare facilities at workplace has been an overdue need for women to work. Actually, this is the need for the family, but since we, the women, the main burden of taking care of the children lies with us. That is, we know that whenever a woman goes to the workplace, they need actually, those who have children, they need the child care or daycare facilities. Father also should feel the like. So it is the responsibility of our government. Government has created or built, according to government, the Ministry of Women and Children Affairs, they have built enough, but I feel that it is not enough yet. For the women to work peacefully, productively, and attentively, we need more and more daycare centers. And another thing, that the 6-month maternity leave that government has actually allowed the women to go for maternity leave for 6 months. This is a very long time. And I think this is the longest in the history of the world, because I have visited many countries, but nowhere I have seen that 6 months maternity leave with full pay. Government has created these facilities for us, thanks to the government. But at the same time, the grim picture is that it is not equally implemented in the private sector. And my urge is that if we can raise the voice, I think this should be equally applied in the private sector, so that the government can reap the harvest of the full economic benefits of the women workforce in the economy of the country. Because we know that the formal sector, the women working in the formal sector is much less than women working in the private sector. I like to stop here with some just 2 lines that since I am working in the Planning Commission, the Planning Commission, the government is now implementing two big plans, which I must say the milestone plans. One is the 8 5-year plan, started from July 2020, and that will end in June 2025. And side by side, we have started another big perspective plan that also started at the same time, that will end in 2041, when we are envisaging to see a developed country, our Bangladesh. So I must stop here, because many people have many things to do. With this, I thank all concerned for this research and endeavor, and hope that its findings will be incorporated in your next programs. Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to say.
Thank you, sir, for your so relevant and pertinent as well as timely some of your suggestion, and we really appreciate your presence. I'm not repeating all the points that you have mentioned. These are recorded. We will listen and come with some of the changes, like donor instead of we are saying donor, your proposed partner, development partner. So success and SDGs, alignment, bullying, all those things are really, I will say, from the government, what you are also emphasizing. We love to work with you as a partner and love to contribute more in the future. So thank you once again, sir.
Welcome. Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So may I beg you leave?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. We will contact with you later on.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So let me now request our key presenter, Dr. Saima Haq Bidisha, Professor, Department of Economics, and Mahatabuddin, lecturer, Department of Economics, who actually lead this whole research work. Over to Saimapa.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let us share the screen first.
Yeah.
Mata, could you please start sharing the screen?
Is my screen visible?
Yeah, it is
Okay.
visible. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. As you already know that today we are talking about a very important aspect, and I thank World Vision for providing SANEM the opportunity, and I welcome all of the guests and the distinguished participants who are listening to us. Now, the fact is, like, we know that when we are talking about different development goals of the country, like if we talk about the national development goals, like the 8th five-year plan, or the Vision 2041, or the Sustainable Development Goal. Like, we know that for attaining all of this goal, it is extremely crucial that we attain women's economic empowerment as well. We make some progress, and we make desirable progress in women's economic empowerment. Now, from that point of view, what is the situation of Bangladesh? Now, in the context of Bangladesh, like, the picture is a little bit mixed. And especially if we look at those women who are from the lower income strata, who are less educated, for these people and those people who are in some poverty pockets, for these people, for these women, they are facing a different type of discrimination in the society, in the economic field, and they're also subject to a lot of vulnerability. Now, from that point of view, our study and this study, we want to look at the different aspects of women economic empowerment. And from that point of view, like the government, obviously the government is playing a key role in terms of attaining women's economic empowerment. And at the same time, also the development partners, the NGOs, they are making different progresses, and they're making different initiatives in order to attain women's economic empowerment of women. Now, from that point of view, like we know that World Vision Bangladesh, it has been working for quite a long time in Bangladesh. And if you look at the type of work that World Vision is doing, many of the works are very closely related to the women's economic empowerment. And from that point of view, especially three key programs, which are Ultra Poor Graduation Program, Nabojatra, and Nutritional Sensitive Value Chain Program of the small farmers. These three programs are very critically related to the women's economic empowerment. Now, based on that, what we are trying to do in this study, basically, as Mr. Chandan has already mentioned, that our main objective or main target is to look at how women's economic empowerment is related to the development of the country. Now, when we talk about this, then we try to look at this from a micro lens and also a macro lens. So basically, there are two key pillars of this research. One pillar, through one pillar, we try to look at the micro picture, and we try to look at how these three important women economic empowerment programs of World Vision are helping the woman to attain economic empowerment. And another thing we also wanted to look at the overall development scenario of the country, overall economic empowerment of the country. And from that point of view, we try to see that how economic growth is contributed by women's economic empowerment. And from these two key aspects, we try to figure out where are the gaps, what we need to do, what lessons we have learned. And from that point of view, we try to identify the role of the stakeholder, role of the government, role of the development partners. So from that point of view, we have adopted a mixed type of methodology. So we have definitely we have desk reviews, we have utilized secondary data, we have utilized primary data, and from that point of view, we also incorporated key informant interviews and FGDs. Now, my colleague Mahatabuddin, he has been closely working on this research for quite a long time, and he has better background information and empirical knowledge than I do have, field level information. So he will share the main findings, and I will join in the later stage. So over to you, Mahata.
Oh, thank you so much, madam. Thanks for giving the floor. Thanks so much, madam, for the big introduction and the introduction to the objective and the our broad goals of this project. So particularly, we will go through the our main findings more broadly rather than on the literature review and other parts. So we, in part, as part of our research, we actually went through the literature extensively, and we found that it is heavily founded in the standard literature that the contribution of women that can be incorporated in the economy if they are employed. And the literature actually sufficiently shows how the women economic empowerment it can be measured and what steps there can be taken. So from the literature, we have found as the pillars of our for measuring how women economic empowerment is being progressed or on those levels. So there are a couple of pillars those have been mentioned in the literature. For example, the working status of women in the past 7 days, or whether the women are honest or not, or women's involvement in the major household decision making, women's control over her own earnings and how to spend it, and so on and so forth. So we actually use these pillars in our survey findings, and based on that, actually we constructed women economic empowerment index later that we'll see. So broadly, our literature, Madam has already mentioned that we have actually had a very mixed approach. We had qualitative approach as well as quantitative techniques. As for the qualitative approach, we had extensive desk research. We did we based on the desk research, during the desk research, we actually went through the labor force survey, 17 household income experience surveys, 16 there, then the SANEM household survey, 2018. On top of the labor force survey or household income experience survey, SANEM household survey, this is the only survey that has both household level data as well as another separate section on the women economic empowerment. So actually, we use some of the parameters from the survey as the background analysis. We collected several primary data. For example, for the quality data, we actually conducted FGDs. We conducted 2 FGDs, one in Dhaka and another one in Jamalpur. And we did 50 KIs and broadly 80 KIs from the civil society association foundations, then donors or development companies, government representative, and INGOs. We did 8 KIs with the program beneficiaries. And as for the quantitative survey, as you have already seen, we have key programs like NSC, and UPG. So we actually, in deciding how many of them to survey, we actually follow the sampling technique by ballot. So actually, based on the formula, we found that our optimal number of sample sizes should be around 384, based on the 95% confidence interval and 5% margin of error. So our design effect of 1.5 and 10% non-response, so our total sample size becomes around 650. And since we need to compare the beneficiaries with someone who didn't receive the benefit, so we had to choose 200 separate groups who were non-beneficiaries. I'd like to say that there were no predefined control group in this study, so we had to actually construct these non-beneficiaries, and they were selected based on their observable factors like housing materials and others. So we collected these 200 non-beneficiaries from other upazilas where actually voluntary program is not being operated. So our total sample coverage was around 850, 200 non-beneficiaries, and 650 beneficiaries. Among the 650, 390 are coming from EPG, 130 from NSBC, and 130 from WSM. So I will go very quickly with the primary findings from the secondary data analysis. So it gives us the context, right? So we see that females, they are if you see the just the bottom column, labor force participation of women, it has been stagnant around 36% over the last 1 decade or so. And if we see where women are employed, we will see that women are mostly employed in the unpaid family labor, where male only 4.2% of the male are engaged as unpaid family workers. In the case of females, this is almost 1/3. So, and what is more is that they are mostly engaged in primary activities like forest and fishery or elementary occupations, in opposite to men who are actually more engaged in professional or more high engaging or high rewarding occupations. So our before moving on to our program findings, let me stick to the programs, the Navojyota, NSBC, and UPG. Chandana has already gave a very brief on this. Basically, Navojyota, the program attempts to address the sustainable development goals of the no poverty, zero hunger, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, decent work and economic growth, and responsible consumption and production to generate sustainable improvement in the southwest coastal region of the country. So it actually works in the Dakopan part of the in Khulna and Shamna in Shakti. NSBC actually aims to attain the 4 broad outcomes, namely, it improves the value chain activities, improve consumption of nutritious food, improve gender equitable relationships, and increase learning on nutritious sensitive agriculture in Bangladesh. So NSBC is operating in Jamalpur. And then comes the UPG. The UPG actually it provides it works with the ultra poor group of the population. So it provides women with entrepreneurial training, access to savings, engagement with the financial institutions, cash transfer, IT implementation, teaching, gardening, coaching and mentoring. It gives them life skills training or saving practices. So what are our survey findings? Based on the survey, these are very the distribution of our interviewed women. So if you see that we have our total beneficiary, we actually surveyed around 1,047 total women we surveyed. Among them, 62% are beneficiary, and around 14% are male family members of the beneficiary, and 24% are the non-beneficiary. Most of the women we surveyed, they are married, and by age group, the median age is around 34, 35 years. We also surveyed, as has already been mentioned, that male participation is very important in terms of ensuring women equal empowerment. So if you look, we also surveyed the male respondents. So in total, we had around 303 male respondents. So our target was to survey the male respondents from the household who was present during the survey. So 75% of them actually comes from the beneficiary households, and 25% of them actually are coming from the non-beneficiary households. And most of the male beneficiaries, their education level is either never attended the school or read up to +5. So the basic household characteristics is I just the beneficiary and non-beneficiary households, they are on most of the indicators. The distribution is mostly similar. It gives us the hint that we are actually comparing with an almost similar group. We are comparing the beneficiaries with almost similar group, almost similar non-beneficiary group with almost similar characteristics. So based on our survey, we actually compared the beneficiary and non-beneficiary. So women who receive the benefit or participate in the water education program like NSBC, Navojyota, and UPG, and women who didn't participate in any kind of this program. So what we observe is that on an average, this is the total one. So on average, 34% of the females, they are working as earners in opposite to around 80% of the males. So this is in line with what we observe for the national level. In case of beneficiary versus non-beneficiary, so what percent of women actually employed by participating in the program? We see that on an average, 9.2 percentage points of the beneficiary women are employed highly than the non-beneficiary group. So for the beneficiary group, we observe 44% of the beneficiary women, they are earning in opposite to 34% non-beneficiary women we surveyed. In terms of savings, we see that the women who are earning in the beneficiary group, 64% of them are saving a part of their earnings. In the case of non-beneficiary group, around 43% of them actually saving a part of their earnings. So what is the amount of their savings? So the beneficiary women, they are saving on an average around 456 taka, and non-beneficiary women, they are on an average saving around 356 taka. So there's around 100 taka gap, between the beneficiary women and non-beneficiary women. So when it comes to financial inclusion, we ask whether they are more familiar with the mobile banking system, or they have whether they have made any transaction through the mobile banking, whether they have mobile banking account. In all these indicators, we found that beneficiary women has higher financial literacy compared to the non-beneficiary group. For example, around in the beneficiary group, the 40% women we surveyed, they said they made transactions to mobile banking services. In the case of non-beneficiary, this is only 20%. Whether the women they have any formal or mobile banking account, in the case of beneficiaries, 43% of the women they replied that they have a formal bank or mobile bank account. In the case of non-beneficiary, we found it around 20%. So one thing, when we talk about women economic empowerment, one thing that's very important is whether women are accumulating any productive asset, whether they own any productive asset. In the case of, so the productive asset can be large livestock, it could be small livestock, it could be farm equipment, it could be non-farm business equipment. In all of these categories, we observe that, beneficiary group, they have higher stock of assets than the non-beneficiary. For example, in the case of large livestock, almost 22%, 21% of the women from the beneficiary group, they own large livestock compared to the non-beneficiary who has around 8.4%. Another important aspect in the case of women economic empowerment is whether women have participated in the household major decision making. So we actually asked them how much their voice or their opinion gets importance in the major household decision making. We took that in a Likert scale, and based on that we actually calculated this score between 0 to 100. So these women participation score, the higher it is, the better participation they have in the major household decision making. So what we observe is that in almost all the categories, women have beneficial women. The red one is beneficial women. So in all categories, beneficial women have higher participation in major household decision making compared to non-beneficiary household women. So, but one thing we must, one pattern you will see from here is that women have higher voices in education, health, marriage, or in such activities, but they have less voice in IGA or purchasing valuable assets or purchasing or constructing houses. So you see when it comes to investment, they have less voice compared to their male house members. Then we also observe whether the participation in the program kind of attributing to education or health expenditure or participation in education. So in the case of school enrollment or school dropout, we observe the rate is almost similar, but in the case of beneficial households, the students who are studying in the lower secondary education, it is slightly almost 7 percentage points lower than the non-beneficiary group. Expenditure on education or healthcare, we observe that the beneficial households, they are spending on an average 320 more on education compared to the non-beneficiary group, and they're spending around 465 more on healthcare per month compared to the non-beneficiary group. Regarding women's access to ICT and mass media, we observe no significant difference between the beneficiary and non-beneficiary group. So this might be one area where you have to look further upon. And women, they have very least access to ICT and less than 7% for both the groups. One very alarming situation that we observed regarding violence against women. We observed that around 71% of our total surveyed women, they face any form of violence in their lifetime. What was the situation in the last 12 months? So we found that comparing the beneficiary and non-beneficiary, in the case of non-beneficiary, around 47% of the women they face some forms of violence in the last 12 months. In the case of beneficiary, it is around 50%. Although it is only 3 percentage points higher, I'd like to mention here that a large chunk of our respondents are coming from the UPG, ultra poor graduation program, and you see the ultra poor, the social background or the social pockets they are coming from, those regions are more stigmatized or more restricted than the other regions. So maybe that might attribute it to some higher score on this particular point. So we also score, we asked the male counterparts, the 303 male respondents we found who actually agreed to give us the responses. So in the male responses, we actually collected, based on 10 indicators, we took the male perception. For example, we asked them if women engage in work, they eventually take away jobs from men, whether they strongly agree or disagree. based on their score, actually we constructed an index. So that male perception index, that is actually between 0 to 100, and the higher the score, the better it is. So we observed that there is no significant difference between the beneficiary and non-beneficiary. So male perception index is actually remains almost similar between the appropriate. We constructed women economic empowerment index. So based on 5 pillars: production, resources, income, digital literacy, and household expenditure decision. And each of the sub-indicators actually contains around 20 marks. So in total, we have 100. The higher the score, the better it is. So in terms of overall women economic empowerment, our score, we observed that the beneficiary, they have the score is 47.90. In the case of non-beneficiary, it's only 42.61. So there is a 5% point gap between the beneficiary and non-beneficiary. So if we look at the the five pillars we just mentioned: production, resources, income, digital literacy, or expenditure decisions, in each of the pillars, actually observed the beneficiary women, they had higher score in terms of women economic empowerment than the non-beneficiary households. However, one thing we must mention is that based on these descriptive statistics, it is not possible to say how these programs are contributing to women economic empowerment. If we do not control for other observable variables or other contributing factors. So one approach to see the direct impact of these programs on the women economic empowerment is applying regression-based models. So we actually applied Heckman two-step procedure, and based on that, our dependent variable actually was the women economic empowerment index, and we observed that beneficiary has almost contributed for all other factors. Beneficiaries have 4.2 percentage point higher scores on the women economic empowerment index. And if we look at the for the programs like NSS and UPG, we observed that each of these programs, the beneficiary from each of these individual programs have higher score on women economic empowerment than the non-beneficiary group. And we also look for the male perception index, the role of male perception. We found that it is highly statistically significant. If we can increase the male perception by 10 percentage points, that will actually lead to around 3.3 percentage points increase in the women economic empowerment index. So one strong message is that male perception matters for empowering women. Now, another research objective that we had is how does female empowerment affect the GDP growth? So we actually applied based on the census data, we applied a vector regression model. So we have we construct based on the ILO-STAT database and the 10 world sample version 10. We actually constructed a time series database for Bangladesh from 1974 to 2019. So our variables were actually capital stock, male employment, and female employment. Our left-hand side variable was GDP. So based on the data, we actually went through all these standard procedures like unit to test, lack selection, or contribution test. So our main findings comes from the vector regression model, and it shows in the long run, female employment is statistically significantly related to the GDP growth rate. What it says, if we increase female employment by say 10%, it will increase the GDP growth rate of Bangladesh by 3.1%. So if you take the 2021 figure, so it would mean that around $11.3 billion being added to the economy. However, we do not see any short-term relationship between the GDP growth rate of female employment, which is actually pretty standard in the academic literature. So with that, actually, I came to the conclusion part. Madam, if you take for some conclusion for this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahatam. I think there was a request from the audience to speak in Bangla, so now I will continue in Bangla. In terms of the রেকমেন্ডেশনের দিক থেকে সুপারিশের দিক থেকে আমরা তিন ধরনের সুপারিশের কথা চিন্তা করেছি। একটি হচ্ছে সরকারের জন্য, আরেকটি হচ্ছে উন্নয়ন সহযোগিতার জন্য, এবং ব্যক্তি খাতে যে প্রতিষ্ঠানগুলো রয়েছে তাদের জন্য। এবং সেই তিন দিকে থেকে যদি আমরা কথা বলি, তাহলে সরকারের জন্য আসলে সুপারিশ যেগুলো রয়েছে সেটার মধ্যে একটা বিষয় যেমন খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ, সেটা হচ্ছে যে আমাদের যে ঝরে পড়া, শিশুদের যে ঝরে পড়ার হার, সেই ঝরে পড়ার হারটাকে রোধ করবার জন্য বিশেষ করে কোভিড কনটেক্সটে বিভিন্ন ধরনের পদ্ধতি নেওয়ার দরকার রয়েছে। এবং একটা বিষয় কিন্তু হতে পারে যে বিভিন্ন প্রাইমারি কিংবা সেকেন্ডারি পর্যায়ে বৃত্তি যেগুলো রয়েছে সেই বৃত্তিগুলোর ক্ষেত্রে বিভিন্ন ধরনের পরিমার্জনা করা যেতে পারে, এটি একটি বিষয়। আমাদের নারী সংক্রান্ত, নারীদের ক্ষমতায়নের সংক্রান্ত বিষয়ে যখনই কথা বলতে যাই, একটা বিষয় খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ, সেটা হচ্ছে সচেতনতা বৃদ্ধি করা। এবং এই সামাজিক সচেতনতা যদি আমরা বৃদ্ধি করতে যাই, সেক্ষেত্রে কিন্তু শিক্ষা একটা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ মাধ্যম, এবং সেক্ষেত্রে কারিকুলাম এবং টেক্সট বুক গুলো যেগুলো রয়েছে সেগুলো যদি জেন্ডার সংবেদনশীল ভাবে তৈরি করা হয় এবং জেন্ডার সংবেদনশীল বিভিন্ন বিষয় যদি সেখানে থাকে, সেটা একটা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ বিষয় হতে পারে। আরেকটি বিষয় হচ্ছে যে কিছুটা বলা যেতে পারে অবহেলিত যে জায়গাটা, সেটা হচ্ছে যে বিভিন্ন জেন্ডার বেস যে সহিংসতা আছে, নারীর প্রতি যে সহিংসতা আছে, এবং তার ফলে নারী যে বিভিন্নভাবে ক্ষতিগ্রস্ত হয় শারীরিকভাবে এবং মানসিকভাবে, সেগুলোর জন্য সেই ধরনের মানসিক স্বাস্থ্যর ক্ষেত্রে লক্ষ্যটা, সেই বিষয়টা কিন্তু কিছুটা দেখা যায় যে অবহেলিত থেকে যায়। এবং সেই বিষয়ে আমাদের মনে হয় যে এখন আমাদের যে বিভিন্ন ধরনের ফাইন্ডিং গুলো রয়েছে, সেগুলো থেকে আমরা বলতে পারি যে এই বিষয়টাকে খুব গুরুত্বের সাথে বিবেচনা করা উচিত এবং সরকারের বিভিন্ন কার্যক্রমে এই কাউন্সেলিং এবং সাইকোথেরাপির বিষয়গুলোকে আনা উচিত। এবং এই বিষয়ে কিন্তু আমি পরবর্তী কার্যক্রমের সাথে একটু ট্যাগ করে বলে দিচ্ছি যে সেখানে কিন্তু আসলে আমাদের যারা উন্নয়ন সহযোগীরা রয়েছেন, যারা বিভিন্ন এনজিওরা রয়েছেন, তারাও কিন্তু খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ ভূমিকা পালন করতে পারে। আরেকটা বিষয় হচ্ছে যে নারী যে কাজের জায়গা, সেই কাজের জায়গায় তাদের যে নিরাপত্তা, সেই নিরাপত্তাটা বিধান করা, এবং তার জন্য বিশেষ করে খুবই গুরুত্বপূর্ণ যে বিভিন্ন গণপরিবহন যেগুলো রয়েছে, সেই গণপরিবহনের নিরাপত্তা বিধান করা। এবং সেক্ষেত্রে কিন্তু খুব কঠোর হস্তে যে কোনো ধরনের শাস্তিমূলক ব্যবস্থার মাধ্যমে হলেও অবশ্যই শাস্তিমূলক ব্যবস্থার মাধ্যমে, সেটা হচ্ছে যে বিভিন্ন কর্মক্ষেত্রে যে সহিংসতা নারীর উপরে হয়ে থাকে সেই বিষয়টি লক্ষ্য রাখা। আরেকটা খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ বিষয়, পরের স্লাইড, সেটা হচ্ছে যে নারীর ক্ষমতায়নের দিকে যদি আমরা দেখি, সেক্ষেত্রে কিন্তু একটা জিনিস খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ, সেটা হচ্ছে যে শিশু দিবা যত্ন কেন্দ্রের মতো বিষয়গুলো। কারণ গৃহস্থালী শ্রমের কারণে নারীরা অনেক সময় শ্রম বাজার থেকে, শিক্ষা থেকেও ঝরে পড়ে। এবং সেই বিষয়ে যেটা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ, সেটা হচ্ছে যে সরকার থেকে ব্যক্তি খাতকে উদ্যোগী করবার জন্য বিভিন্ন ধরনের প্রণোদনা দেওয়া যেতে পারে। এর পাশাপাশি বিভিন্ন ধরনের ডে কেয়ার ভাউচার রয়েছে, যেগুলো উন্নত বিশ্বগুলোতে রয়েছে, সেগুলো থাকতে পারে। আমাদের স্কুলগুলোর ক্ষেত্রে বড় ধরনের পরিবর্তন আনা যেতে পারে কাঠামোর ক্ষেত্রে। এবং আরেকটা বিষয় হচ্ছে যে অনেক ক্ষেত্রে দেখা যায় যে অনেক ধরনের প্রণোদনা কিন্তু কাজ করে, এবং এই ব্যক্তি খাতে এই প্রণোদনাগুলোর মধ্যে এরকম হতে পারে যে যদি কোনো প্রতিষ্ঠান যদি নারী বান্ধব কর্মসূচিতে অংশগ্রহণ করে, অর্থাৎ সেটা হতে পারে যে মাতৃত্বকালীন ছুটির ক্ষেত্রে নারী বান্ধব কর্মসূচি, ফ্লেক্সিবল কাজের সময়ের বিষয়টি হতে পারে যে নারীর জন্য যে ডে কেয়ার ফ্যাসিলিটি, সেটার জন্য বিশেষ ধরনের যদি সুবিধা দেওয়া হয়, সেই ধরনের যদি সুবিধাগুলো যে যারা দেবেন তাদের জন্য, এবং যদি নারী কর্মী যদি বেশি তারা রাখেন প্রপোর্শনেটলি, তাদের জন্য কিন্তু কিছুটা ট্যাক্সের ক্ষেত্রে কিছুটা ছাড় দেওয়া যেতে পারে। কর ছাড় দেওয়ার মাধ্যমে এই ব্যক্তি খাতকে কিন্তু আমরা আমাদের কাজের মধ্যে আনতে পারি, সরকার তার কাজের মধ্যে আনতে পারে। তো এর পরের স্লাইড। তো এটা খুব মোটা দাগে বলতে গেলে এই বিষয়গুলো হচ্ছে যে আমাদের চিন্তা করতে হবে যখন আমরা বলে থাকি যে সরকারের ক্ষেত্রে আমাদের যে রেকমেন্ডেশনটা আমাদের কাজের ভিত্তিতে, আমাদের গবেষণার ভিত্তিতে। আর উন্নয়ন সহযোগীদের ক্ষেত্রে কয়েকটা বিষয় খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। একটা বিষয় হচ্ছে যে বিভিন্ন ধরনের উন্নয়ন সহযোগীরা যেটা বিভিন্ন ধরনের প্রশিক্ষণ, বিভিন্ন ধরনের শিক্ষার কর্মসূচি, এবং একটু আগে যেটা বললাম যে নারীর প্রতি সহিংসতার জন্য বিভিন্ন ধরনের তাদের মানসিক স্বাস্থ্যের জন্য যে বিভিন্ন কর্মসূচিগুলো রয়েছে, সেই কর্মসূচিতে সরকারের সাথে কিন্তু পার্টনার হিসেবে, সহযোগী হিসেবে কাজ করতে পারে, এবং সেই কাজের জায়গাটা যেন আরো প্রশস্ত হয়, আরো গভীর হয়, সেটা কিন্তু গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। আরেকটা বিষয় খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ, সেটা হচ্ছে যে যখনই উন্নয়ন সহযোগীদের বিভিন্ন প্রজেক্ট গুলো নেওয়া হবে, তখন কয়েকটি বিষয় মাথায় রাখা দরকার, কয়েকটি বিষয় যেন থাকে। একটা হচ্ছে প্রোগ্রামগুলো যেগুলো রয়েছে, সেই প্রোগ্রামগুলোর মধ্যে ওমেন ইকোনমিক এম্পাওয়ারমেন্ট, যেটা নারীর ক্ষমতায়নের বিষয়টি যাতে একটা আলাদা কম্পোনেন্ট থাকার বিষয়টি চিন্তা করা যেতে পারে, একটা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ একটি কম্পোনেন্ট হিসেবে। আরেকটি বিষয় হচ্ছে প্রজেক্টর গুলোর ক্ষেত্রে আমরা কিন্তু একটু আগে মাহতাব কিন্তু বারবার যেটা বলছিল সেটা হচ্ছে যে পুরুষ সদস্য যারা রয়েছে তাদের সংবেদনশীল করে তোলাটা জরুরি, এবং সেখানে কিন্তু উন্নয়ন সহযোগীদের কর্মকাণ্ডের মধ্যে একটা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ ফোকাস থাকতে পারে। আরেকটা বিষয় হচ্ছে যে নারীর প্রতি সহিংসতা, যেটা জেন্ডার বেসড ভায়োলেন্স, যেটা সেই জেন্ডার বেসড ভায়োলেন্সের উপরে কিন্তু প্রজেক্ট গুলোতে আলাদা ধরনের কম্পোনেন্ট থাকতে পারে, অর্থাৎ এই কম্পোনেন্ট গুলোকে বলা যেতে পারে বারবার যাতে এই কম্পোনেন্ট গুলো সব ধরনের প্রোগ্রামে যেন আসে, অল্প হলেও যেন আসে, যাতে করে এই সহিংসতার ব্যাপারে যে ধরনের অ্যাওয়ারনেসটা দরকার, যে সচেতনতা দরকার, সেই সচেতনতার যদি কেন তৈরি হয়। এবং এই সচেতনতার ক্ষেত্রে আরো একটা বিষয় কিন্তু গুরুত্বপূর্ণ, সেই বিষয়টা হচ্ছে যে বিভিন্ন যে মাস মিডিয়াতে যেটা বিভিন্ন ধরনের ক্যাম্পেইন গুলো হয়, সেই ক্যাম্পেইন গুলোতে কিন্তু যারা উন্নয়ন সহযোগীরা রয়েছে তারা কিন্তু কোলাবোরেট করতে পারে এই ক্যাম্পেইন গুলোতে, যাতে করে এই প্রকৃত এই মানসিকতার পরিবর্তনের মাধ্যমে যাতে প্রকৃত অবস্থার পরিবর্তন ঘটে, এবং বিশেষ করে পুরুষ সদস্যদের মধ্যে এক ধরনের যে সংবেদনশীলতা নারীর কাজের প্রতি, নারীর ক্ষমতায়নের প্রতি, সেই সংবেদনশীলতা। সবার শেষে ব্যক্তি খাতকে নিয়ে যদি কথা বলতে হয়, খুব সংক্ষেপে বলতে হলে প্রথমেই আমরা যেটা বলেছি সেটা হচ্ছে কর্মক্ষেত্রে নারীর অংশগ্রহণকে বাড়ানোর জন্য ব্যক্তি খাত কিন্তু বিভিন্ন ধরনের কাজ করতে পারে, এবং সেটার ক্ষেত্রে কিন্তু সরকার বিভিন্ন প্রণোদনা দিতে পারে। আরেকটি খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ বিষয় হচ্ছে যে ব্যক্তি খাত কিন্তু নারীদেরকে সাপ্লাই চেইনের সাথে যুক্ত করবার জন্য কাজ করতে হচ্ছে যে নারী কৃষক যারা রয়েছেন, গ্রামে যারা নারী কৃষক রয়েছেন, তাদেরকে যদি কিছুটা সুলভ মূল্যে এবং কিছুটা সাবসিডাইজ মূল্যে যদি বিভিন্ন ধরনের বীজ, বিভিন্ন ধরনের সার এগুলো বিতরণ করা যায়, সেটা একটা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ বিষয় হতে পারে, এবং সেটা কিন্তু তাদের সিএসআর ফান্ড যেটা রয়েছে সেখান থেকে কিন্তু দেওয়ার একটা চিন্তা ভাবনা করা যেতে পারে। এর পাশাপাশি যে জিনিসটা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ হতে পারে সেটা হচ্ছে যে যখন আমরা বিভিন্ন কাজের কথা বলি, বিভিন্ন এমপ্লয়মেন্ট অপরচুনিটির কথা বলি, তখন আমরা কিন্তু যেটা আমাদের এক ধরনের স্টেরিওটাইপ ধারণা রয়েছে, প্রাইভেট সেক্টর ব্যক্তি খাত তারা কিন্তু উদ্যোগী হয়ে বিভিন্ন ধরনের নতুন ধরনের চিন্তা নিয়ে আসতে পারে, এবং নারীদেরকে বিভিন্ন ধরনের নন ট্র্যাডিশনাল যে বিভিন্ন ধরনের কাজকর্ম রয়েছে সেই কাজকর্মগুলোতে, যেমন বিভিন্ন ডিলারশিপের এজেন্ট হিসেবে, বিভিন্ন ডিস্ট্রিবিউশন এজেন্ট হিসেবে, সেইখানে যদি নারীদেরকে বেশি বেশি হারে কাজে লাগায়, তখন সেটাও কিন্তু এক ধরনের ইতিবাচক একটা চিত্র দিতে পারে। তো আমাদের যে প্রস্তাবনা, সেই প্রস্তাবনা আরো বেশ কিছু প্রস্তাবনার কথা বলা যেতে পারে, এবং আমি জানি যে আমাদের যারা প্যানেলিস্টরা রয়েছেন তারাও এই বিষয়ে বলবেন। তো আমাদের উপস্থাপনা এখানেই শেষ হচ্ছে। একটু 1 মিনিট বোধহয় আমাদেরকে বলা হয়েছিল যে আমরা যদি পুরো জিনিসটাকে একটু সামারি করি, 1 মিনিটে সামারি করাটা জটিল, তারপরও যদি আমরা বলি তাহলে এখানে যেটি বিষয় সেটি হচ্ছে যে আমরা আসলে মূলত দেখার চেষ্টা করছি নারীর ক্ষমতায়নের সাথে আমাদের দেশের যে উন্নয়ন, সেই উন্নয়নের সম্পর্কটা বোঝার চেষ্টা করেছি, এবং সেটার ক্ষেত্রে আমরা আসলে সামষ্টিক পর্যায়ে এবং ব্যষ্টিক পর্যায়ে উভয় ভাবেই কিন্তু জিনিসটা দেখবার চেষ্টা করছি। আমরা যেটা দেখবার চেষ্টা করেছি সেটা হচ্ছে, এবং আমরা যেটা পেয়েছি সেটা হচ্ছে যে যখন সচেতনতা বৃদ্ধির বিভিন্ন কার্যক্রম নেওয়া হয়, যেমন ওয়ার্ল্ড ভিশনের বিভিন্ন প্রোগ্রামের মাধ্যমে আমরা দেখেছি, সেই সচেতনতা বৃদ্ধির কার্যক্রমগুলো কিন্তু নারীর আর্থসামাজিক অবস্থা, নারীর ক্ষমতা, এই সার্বিকভাবে বিভিন্ন যে সূচকের আমরা দেখেছি সেই সূচকগুলোর ক্ষেত্রে কিন্তু একটা ইতিবাচক পরিবর্তন আনতে পারে সেটা। এবং সেক্ষেত্রে আমরা বিভিন্ন কম্পোনেন্টে দেখেছি যে আরো বিভিন্ন বিষয়, যে পুরুষের ক্ষেত্রে পুরুষের সংবেদনশীলতা, সেই বিষয়টাও কিন্তু খুব জরুরি। আর আরেকটা বিষয় যেটা দেখেছি যে সেটি হচ্ছে যে নারীর যদি ক্ষমতায়ন হয়, সে নারীর ক্ষমতায়নটা হচ্ছে সার্বিকভাবে একটি দেশের উন্নয়ন, এবং নারীর ক্ষমতায়নটা আমরা এখানে দেখেছি যে নারী যদি কর্মক্ষেত্রে যদি নারীর অংশগ্রহণ বাড়ে, তার অর্থাৎ একটা অর্থনৈতিক যদি ক্ষমতায়ন তার হয়, সেটি কিন্তু সার্বিকভাবে দেশের উন্নয়ন, এবং দেশের উন্নয়নকে আমরা এখানে বোঝাতে চেয়েছি যে জাতীয় আয়ের যে প্রবৃদ্ধি, সেক্ষেত্রেও কিন্তু একটা ইতিবাচক একটা পরিবর্তন পাই। অর্থাৎ সচেতনতা বৃদ্ধি কার্যক্রম নারীর আর্থসামাজিক অবস্থার উন্নয়ন করতে সক্ষম, এবং নারীর আর্থসামাজিক উন্নয়ন যদি করতে যখন হয়, তখন কিন্তু সার্বিকভাবে দেশের উন্নয়ন হয়, এবং জাতীয় আয়ের ক্ষেত্রে একটা প্রবৃদ্ধি আমরা এর ক্ষেত্রে আমরা একটা ইতিবাচক দিক আমরা দেখতে পাই। সুতরাং মোটামুটি ভাবে মোটা দাগে আমাদের যে পুরো গবেষণা, সেই গবেষণার মূল যে সুরটা, সেই মূল সুরটা এটাই, এবং আমরা বিভিন্ন তথ্য উপাত্ত দিয়ে প্রাথমিক তথ্য, সেকেন্ডারি তথ্য, বিভিন্ন ধরনের তথ্য উপলব্ধ এবং বিভিন্ন ধরনের মডেলিং এর মাধ্যমে এই জিনিসটা দেখাবার চেষ্টা করেছি। এরপরে যদি আপনাদের প্রশ্ন থাকে প্রশ্নগুলো করতে পারেন, আমি এবং মাহাতাব আমরা এগুলোর উত্তর দেওয়ার চেষ্টা করব। ধন্যবাদ।
Thank you. Excellent presentation, Saima Appa and Mahatab sir. This was the main keynotes or presentation for today's discussion. And up to now, we have 75 participants from different sectors. As I have mentioned it, we have invited corporate, banks, NGOs, INGOs, development partner, and also some of our colleagues, World Vision colleagues. So you are having some comments also in the chat box. We are taking note, as well as it's we will have recording. And by this time, we are honored that some media house also join with us, which is really great. And they requested this presentation as well as some Bengali version. During discussion, if we can also mix English, Bengali, that would be great for them. So as a whole, let us make it more convenient for all of us to understand, because few of our participants are speaking in English, most of are in Bengali. However, I can see some of the discussion would take place and comments are also putting here. So anyway, thank you once again, Saima Appa and Mahatab Bhai, for your wonderful presentation. Now we will start our panel discussion. And we already shared this summary presentation or summary report to all of you. Let us focus mainly on this research, observation, findings, because there are some recommendations to the government, development partner, INGOs, and private sector. And like our previous discussion, Nasima Begum made 2 specific recommendations, as well as 2 shared only 2 findings or observations. Likewise, we will request your very key focus as well as recommendation or clarity in addition to this presentation. So let me request now Mr. Gunjan Dalakati, SME Development Specialist of ILO office in Dhaka. We will allow sir 3 to 5 minutes, maximum 5 minutes to you for your discussion. Over to Gunjan.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chandan, and good afternoon, colleagues. I'm pleased to be here. Thank you for inviting ILO for this session. Very interesting and very informative session indeed. And yeah, it would have been nice if I could have got my national colleagues so that I can understand the overall presentation and themes. But anyway, the presentation has been shared in advance so that I can pick up some information here. So a couple of points that I want to share here is basically when we talk about women's economic empowerment, the whole dimension, we carry these 4 broader things: the access, the agency, the choice, and the control. You know, these 4 things needs to go together when you talk about that women economic empowerment. And I can clearly see that these themes have been carried away during the program design. Although we might have been benefited a bit more about this, about the finding of the program, a bit more elaborate finding of the program, but this is really covered well. Really appreciate about that. Couple of points that I want to highlight here is that when I saw that WEE index that you have captured, that index has at some point missed the points, like, for example, the access, basically access to not only the property, but also opportunity to learn a skill, opportunity and rights, you know, for learning a skill, for improving knowledge, improving business practice and things like that. That access to software part, that human capital development part, could be one of the important aspects that leads to the access to the agency. That's one of the things that that I have noticed there. And another thing is in terms of having that access and making that transformative change for women economic empowerment, the freedom from risks and violence is another critical point that we often include during WE programming and during measurement of women's economic empowerment. These are two quick sense that I want to highlight in that WE index. And similarly, on the one of the key issues that we have been talking is, yes, in the economic literature, labor is factor of production, but we have to move slightly away from that factor of production mindset. Labor is a human resource. Now, just moving from that mere factor of production to more human face, human resource, that makes a lot of difference on how we move away from women and development concept to more on gender and development concept. So that's another paradigm shift that we need to make during this discussion, whenever it comes to discussion about the women's participation or gender-based development approach or women economic empowerment approach. And a third point that I would have already, I would have benefited more is if I could have seen the recommendation, the specific recommendation that you have made more linked to the finding of the project or finding the study. Like for example, some of the recommendations that you have mentioned is about having more stipend for the school rolling students and things like that. Is it linked to the project finding, or is it linked to somewhere else? Has it been tried? Or that kind of thing would have been this recommendation. It's a very good set of recommendation, very comprehensive, especially for us, for the program designer. This is very important, but it would have been nice if that recommendation were referenced somewhere or other to the findings of the study, whether it is through the project or it is through the broader secondary review and things like that. So these are three areas that I see that this report could be further explored and elaborated. And I really thank you for your time to invite and letting me to speak here. And having gone through the report, I really appreciate SANEM and World Vision Bangladesh for all this nice, excellent work. Thank you so much, and over.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gunjan, for your two specific recommendation. One is missing access to the opportunities, particularly software support, transformative change, and more specific recommendation with some illustrative link or reference. So these are well accepted, and definitely SANEM will take care of it, and World Vision will critically look after. Thank you once again, sir, for your participation and wonderful contribution in this discussion. Now let me request Dr. Sanjida Akhtar, Associate Professor, Department of Women and Gender Studies, University of Dhaka. Dr. Sanjida, over to you. Okay, maybe she's not yet joined, as I cannot read out the whole names.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome, madam. Go ahead.
Thank you, SANEM and World Vision Bangladesh, for giving me this opportunity to talk here. I was actually listening to the presentations and the discussion very with full attention, because I found this presentation and study very helpful, because it has captured a broad spectrum of understanding the women's role of women's economic empowerment in the overall development of the country. And although I'm not an economist, and many of the economic terms that have been used here I didn't understand, and many of the indexes thing, but the key messages that has been summarized by Dr. Bidisha Haq at the end, and the recommendations and some of the key points is really thought-provoking for me. So I'm trying to focus on those things. The study, I have, just before starting my discussion, I have participated a few years ago in one of the program of Nobo Jatra, I remember, as a discussant, and I had a presentation there. And from that event, I came to know about Navajatra, a wonderful program of empowering women from the root level. So saying this, what some of the key thing that I found very interesting here, I was looking at the the economic empowerment of beneficiaries and non-beneficiaries in this study, and I found that in many indicator, the program beneficiaries are well ahead from the non-beneficiaries. For example, in terms of financial inclusion, in terms of household decision making, in terms of human capital development, beneficiaries are like 10 to 15, in some places 20% ahead of the non-beneficiaries. But in one slide, where it was displayed, the violence against women issues, and I didn't find any major difference between the beneficiaries group and non-beneficiaries group. So I think special concentration and focus should be given here. What does it mean? Does it mean that even after addressing all the economic empowerment indicators such as financial inclusion, decision making, and all of these things, we are not able to reduce violence against women? Does it mean so? So I think this is one of the important things that we need to focus on. And by saying this, I must say that in the recommendations, I found that many recommendations has very nicely articulated the need of addressing how to reduce the risk of violence against women, by stopping children dropouts, by accommodating women economic empowerment program in all the livelihood programs, and such kind of suggestions have been given by the study team in the recommendation section. So if these kind of activities is taken by the programs that is being taken by the government, by the non-government organizations. In the first discussion, Nasima Appa, she also mentioned that the government and non-government organizations needs a concerted effort to ensure women economic empowerment. So if these recommendations is properly executed, I think that we can see a difference between the beneficiary and non-beneficiaries group in terms of the violence against women. And I'm focusing on violence against women in a sense that I also found in the study that like ADP, one of the study of ADP has been mentioned in this presentation, that if women are equally employed as men, then the labor force of the country could have increased 43%. That means we could have got 27% increase in GDP. So which actually indicates the dire need of increasing women's economic participation in for the further development of the country. But when we are talking about women's labor force participation or women economic participation, from the gender point of view, what we found that there is a very much structural and cultural difficulties. These structural difficulties can include anything that is related to our infrastructure, other structure systems, and everything. And I can start from the transport system to the office setup, everything that actually needs to be counted to increase women's participation in the way from for everything. Similarly with my mother also have to take the are usually expected to take the responsibility of reproductive role. So it is also important to understand critically the family dynamics to make effective steps to increase women's economic participation, because the recent data may say that the in terms of the number of increasing participation of women in the higher education, the number of women participation in the workplace or the labor market is not increasing proportionately. Because of this, we are yet to address all the structural and cultural difficulties or the cultural challenges, I would rather say. We have to actually all together in all the programs, we also need to address all of these things. Sorry, I focus more on the violence and gender perspective things. That's the point I can talk. I am not an expert in economics. So from my part, that's all. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Bidisha and the other presenter. It was an honor for me to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, Sanjida Akhtar, Dr. Sanjida Akhtar, for your wonderful focus on gender and violence against women area, which is relevant, and we required such thoughtful idea and suggestion. And thank you very much for agreeing the recommendations, and you have elaborated some of the area that we need to focus more in the future. So once again, thank you, Apa. Let me now request Laila Farjana, Senior Category Head Marketing, Unilever Bangladesh. Farjana, Laila Apa, over to you.
Yes, I think, I hope I am audible.
Yes, loud and clear.
আচ্ছা, আমি চেষ্টা করছি যতটা সম্ভব কথা বাংলায় বলার জন্য, এটা নিয়ে একটা অনুরোধ ছিল এই জন্য। সো আমি আজকে রিসার্চের যে পোর্শনটুকু আসলে প্রাইভেট সেক্টর নিয়েছিল সেখানে আমি একটু ফোকাস করব। পুরো জিনিসটাকে আমি আসলে দুভাগে ভাগ করেছি যে রেকমেন্ডেশন গুলো এসেছে। একটা প্রথম ভাগ যেটা ছিল সেটা হচ্ছে মহিলাদের পার্টিসিপেশন নিয়ে, আমাদের অংশগ্রহণ করা নিয়ে। অংশগ্রহণের মধ্যে একটা খুব সুন্দর পয়েন্ট তুলে ধরা হয়েছে, যেটা হচ্ছে ভ্যালু চেইনের মধ্যে আমরা আসলে কিভাবে মহিলাদের অংশদারিত্ব আরো বাড়াতে পারি। প্রাইভেট সেক্টর থেকে খুব বেশি দিন হয়নি যেখানে এই এফোর্টটা আমরা দেখতে পাচ্ছি যে বিভিন্ন কোম্পানিগুলো চেষ্টা করছে যে তাদের ভ্যালু চেইনের মধ্যে দুটো জায়গায় মহিলাদের জন্য একটা জায়গা ক্রিয়েট করার জন্য। একটা হচ্ছে দোকানদারিত্ব, যেখানে আমাদের আসলে যতগুলো দোকান আছে তার মধ্যে আমরা মোটামুটি 99%ই পুরুষদেরকে দেখতে পাই। এখানে আসলে মহিলাদের অংশগ্রহণ করা এটা একটা অনেক বড় পরিবর্তন নিয়ে আসবে আমাদের ভ্যালু চেইনের মধ্যে, যদি আমরা মহিলাদের অংশদারিত্ব বাড়াতে চাই। আরেকটা ব্যাপার যেটা আছে যে ভ্যালু চেইনের মধ্যে বিভিন্ন কোম্পানিগুলো তাদের সাপ্লাই চেইনের একটা বড় অংশ যেটা হচ্ছে পণ্য বিতরণ, সেখানে এটা একটা 100% মেল ডমিনেটেড একটা ভ্যালু চেইন। এখানেও মেয়েদের অংশদারিত্ব বাড়ানোর জন্য কিছু কিছু কোম্পানি এখন এগিয়ে এসছে। যেটা সমস্যা হচ্ছে সেটা হচ্ছে আমরা এখনো পর্যন্ত এই ব্যাপারটা ক্রিয়েট করার জন্য বিভিন্ন কোম্পানিকে আগাতে দেখছি, কিন্তু এই অংশগ্রহণটা নেয়ার জন্য খুব বেশি মহিলাদেরকে আমরা এগিয়ে আসতে দেখতে পাচ্ছি না। এবং এখানে আমার আসলে একটা রেকমেন্ডেশন যেটা থাকবে সেটা হচ্ছে আমরা যখন স্কুল, কলেজ, ইউনিভার্সিটি পার হয়ে একটা কর্মস্থলে আসি, ততদিনে আসলে একটা মেয়ে আর একটা ছেলের মধ্যে সমতার একটা বোধ চলে আসে। কিন্তু আমরা এখন যাদেরকে নিয়ে কথা বললাম ভ্যালু চেইনে অংশগ্রহণ করার জন্য, তারা আসলে স্কুলের গণ্ডি বেশিরভাগ সময় পার হয়নি, এবং স্কুলের এই যে মোটামুটি ক্লাস 5 এর মধ্যে যারা ঝরে পড়ছে তারা কিন্তু এই সমতার বোধটা নিয়ে স্কুল থেকে বের হয়নি। তো এখানে বোধহয় একটু পলিসি নিয়ে কাজ করার একটা জায়গা আছে, যেখানে আমরা আসলে ছোট বাচ্চাদের ওই অবস্থা থেকে আসলে সমতার বোধটা তাদের মাথায়, তাদের বুদ্ধিবৃত্তি অনুযায়ী তাদের মাথায় যেন আমরা এটা দিতে পারি যে পরবর্তী জীবনেও যখন তুমি আসলে কাজ করতে যাবে, সেই কর্মস্থলের জন্য আসলে শিক্ষা যে খুব প্রয়োজনীয় তা না। কোনো রকম শিক্ষা ছাড়াও তুমি যখন কর্মস্থলে যাবে সেখানেও তোমার একটা সমতা থাকতে পারে। সো পার্টিসিপেশনের আরেকটা অংশ হচ্ছে যারা আসলে স্কুল, কলেজ, ইউনিভার্সিটি পার হয়ে তারপরে একটা ফর্মাল একটা ওয়ার্ক প্লেসে যাচ্ছে, সেটা প্রাইভেট সেক্টর হতে পারে, পাবলিক সেক্টর হতে পারে। এখানে আমরা দেখবো যে আসলে গত কয়েক বছর ধরে, গত 2 দশক ধরেই আসলে আমাদের নাম্বারটা বেশ বাড়ছে। যদিও আমাদের এই রিসার্চটা আমাদেরকে এখনো বলছে যে 2010 থেকে 2020 এর মধ্যে এই সূচকটা খুব বেশি নড়াচড়া করেনি। তারপরেও আমরা আসলে বিভিন্ন ধরনের এমএনসি গুলোতে বেশিরভাগ সময় দেখতে পাই যে আসলে এখন অংশগ্রহণ অনেক বেড়েছে। যারা মোটামুটি ফ্রেশ গ্রাজুয়েট হিসেবে জয়েন করে একটা কোম্পানিতে, সেই পার্সেন্টেজের দিকে যদি আমরা তাকাই তাহলে দেখবো যে আমরা মেয়েদের পার্সেন্টেজ এখানে আসলে বাড়তে শুরু করেছে। তো এখানে আসলে প্রাইভেট সেক্টর নিজেরাই একটু এগিয়ে এসেছে, যেখানে গ্লোবালি যে এইচআর পলিসি গুলো এখন মোটামুটি আলোচিত, যে আমি যখন আসলে প্রথমেই একটা ক্যান্ডিডেটকে নিব সেখানেই আমি 50% মেল অ্যান্ড 50% ফিমেল এটা এনশিওর করতে পারি কিনা, এই ধরনের নীতিমালা এখন আসলে আমাদের দেশেও প্রচুর এমএনসি গুলো নিয়ে এসেছে এবং সেটার পথ ধরে আসলে বিভিন্ন দেশীয় কোম্পানিগুলো এই ব্যাপারে এগিয়ে এসেছে। তো এখানে আসলে প্রাইভেট সেক্টরের অবদান আমি বলবো যে প্রতিটা জায়গায় প্রতিটা কোম্পানিতে এই যে একটা বিশাল ব্যাপার থেকে বেরিয়ে আসা, যে আমি আসলে একদম ইন্টারভিউ লেভেলে আমি একটা ছেলে বা মেয়ের মধ্যে আমি একদম 50-50 এনশিওর করার চেষ্টা করছি, এটা একটা বড় ধরনের চেঞ্জ এবং এটা আসলে বাংলাদেশ ব্যাপী সকল কোম্পানির মধ্যে এই পলিসিগত চেঞ্জটা এটা আনা যেতে যদি পারে তাহলে অ্যাক্সেস লেভেলে পার্টিসিপেশন বা অংশগ্রহণ করাটা এটা আমরা এনশিওর করে ফেলতে পারছি। দ্বিতীয় ভাগে যেটা আমি ভাগ করতে চেয়েছি এই রিসার্চটা থেকে, সেটা হচ্ছে আমরা অংশগ্রহণ যখন এনশিওর করার কথা বলছি তারপরে একটা বড় অংশ যেখানে বাংলাদেশ অনেক পিছিয়ে আছে সেটা হচ্ছে সাস্টেইন করা। যারা আসলে এগিয়ে আসছে তাদেরকে আমরা সাস্টেইন করতে পারছি না এবং কয়েকটা ডিসকাশন এখানে পাবলিক প্রাইভেট বিভিন্ন রেকমেন্ডেশন থেকে উঠে আসছে যে কেন আসলে মেয়েরা টিকে থাকতে পারছে না। কর্মস্থল পর্যন্ত কিন্তু অনেকেই আসছে, কিন্তু তারপরে একটা সময় পর যখন সে একটা সন্তানের মা হচ্ছে তখন আমরা দেখেছি রেকমেন্ডেশন হিসেবে এসেছে যে আসলে একটা বাচ্চাদের কেয়ার নেওয়ার মতো একটা জায়গা না থাকলে সেই মার জন্য আসলে কাজটা কন্টিনিউ করা সম্ভব হচ্ছে না। আরেকটা রেকমেন্ডেশনে উঠে এসেছে যে ট্রান্সপোর্টেশন, গণপরিবহনে আসলে মেয়েদের সেই যাতায়াতের ব্যবস্থা না থাকার কারণে তাকে সোসাইটি থেকে বিভিন্ন ধরনের প্রশ্নের সম্মুখীন হতে হয় এবং আমরা আমাদের নিজেদের সোসাইটির মধ্যে চিন্তা করতে পারি যে আমাদের মেয়েরা যখন বাসে উঠে একটা অফিসে যাবে তখন বাবা হিসেবে বা মা হিসেবে আমাদের আসলে অন্যরকম একটা চিন্তা হয়। এই জিনিসগুলো কিন্তু আসলে এই প্রাইভেট সেক্টরকেও হ্যাম্পার করছে। সো সাস্টেইন করার বেলা আমি বলবো যে গভর্নমেন্টের থেকে যদি কিছু পলিসি আসে যেখানে কোম্পানিগুলো একদিকে যেমন হচ্ছে বাচ্চার সেবা নেওয়ার দায়িত্বগুলো নেবে, অন দি আদার হ্যান্ড গণপরিবহনের ব্যবস্থাটা যদি আসলে আরেকটু ঠিকঠাক মতো হয় তাহলে সাস্টেইন করা মেয়েদেরকে এইচআর মানব সম্পদ হিসেবে সাস্টেইন করাটা এটা আসলে আমরা এখনো অনেক পিছিয়ে আছি, এই জায়গায় আমাদের কাজ করার সুযোগ আছে। 3 নাম্বার একটা জায়গা যেটা আমি টাচ করে যেতে পারবো সেটা হচ্ছে রিসার্চটার একটা অংশ খুব ভালো লেগেছে আমার, যে ফিমেল এমপ্লয়মেন্ট ইম্প্যাক্ট অন জিডিপি, এটা নিয়ে যখন কথাবার্তা হচ্ছে বৈশ্বিকভাবে এটা নিয়ে এখন অনেক কথাবার্তা হচ্ছে যে যখন একটা কোম্পানি তার এইচআর নিয়ে চিন্তা করে সেখানেও কিছু রিসার্চে বেরিয়ে এসেছে যখন মেয়েদের পার্টিসিপেশন একটা কোম্পানিতে বেড়ে যায় তখন সেই কোম্পানিটার প্রফিটেবিলিটি ডিরেক্টলি বেড়ে যায়। এটা কিন্তু শুধু ব্যাপারটা এমন না যে আমি আসলে আমার কোম্পানিতে দেখতে চাই 50% ছেলে 50% মেয়ে হোক, ব্যাপারটা এতটা খেলো না। একটা কোম্পানির যার প্রাইমারি অবজেক্টিভ থাকে প্রফিটেবিলিটি, সেখানেই আসলে মেয়েদের পার্টিসিপেশন এনশিওর করাটা তার প্রফিটেবিলিটির জন্য যদি একটা পজিটিভ জিনিস হয়ে থাকে কোম্পানিগুলো আসলে নিজ উদ্যোগে আসলে এখানে এগিয়ে আসবে। সো আমি প্রাইভেট সেক্টর থেকে বলবো যে এই ব্যাপারগুলো আসলে প্রাইভেট সেক্টরে এই ধরনের রিসার্চ যদি কিছুটা দেশেও হয় that will be my suggestion as a for the research agency here, যে আপনারা যদি এই ধরনের কোনো কাজ করেন তাহলে আমাদের দেশীয় কোম্পানিগুলো যারা এই ধরনের ধারণাগুলো নিয়ে একেবারেই নতুন তারাও আসলে এগিয়ে আসবে, যে আসলে আমি যদি একদম সোজা বাংলায় বলি একটা কোম্পানিতে একটা মেয়ে থাকা মানে হচ্ছে সে আসলে ওই কোম্পানির যারা কনজিউমার তারা তো 50% ছেলে 50% মেয়ে, এই পপুলেশনের 50% মেয়েকে সেই মেয়েটা বুঝতে পারবে এবং এভাবেই আসলে প্রফিটেবিলিটি এনশিওর হয়। সো এই 3টা জায়গা আমার কাছে মনে হয়েছে রিসার্চটা থেকে খুবই ইম্পর্টেন্ট এন্ড আমি তো চাইবো যে প্রাইভেট সেক্টরে আসলে কোম্পানিগুলো যেরকম এগিয়ে আসছে সোসাইটির সাইড থেকে যদি আরো একটু সাপোর্ট বাড়ানো যায় তাহলে সম্ভবত এই জিনিসটা আমরা 10 বছরেই দেখবো এই সুযোগগুলো নড়তে শুরু করেছে আবার। সো ধন্যবাদ চন্দনদা, আবার আপনার কাছে ব্যাক করবো।
অনেক ধন্যবাদ। থ্যাংক ইউ ভেরি মাচ লাইলা আপা ফর ইউর সো ডিপ and very specific 3 observation and recommendation and exploring some of the options also for future research, which is really great for the benefit of our country as well as how we can collaborate with the corporate as well as government, which is really appreciating your thoughtful idea. I'm not going to repeat all other points, but appreciate your nice contribution in this forum. Okay, we are almost done. The discussant would be the last discussant, Mehzabin Ahmed, Program Coordinator, UN Women Bangladesh. So may I request Mehzabin Bhai to share, not Bhai, say Bon. sorry, again, sorry. Go ahead, Mehzabin Appa. Thank you.
So thanks for a good study to SANEM and World Vision. Interestingly, sometimes I see that studies on women and economic empowerment focus only on change in income or changing savings. But this study goes rightly further in depth into assessing whether there's change in control or decision making of women also as a result of income, right? So that is an important point to look at, looking at excess use and control. The study also looked at male perception, and I saw that between the beneficiary and non-beneficiary, there wasn't much change in male perception. So maybe that's something that should come into the recommendation. You know, we at UN, we've seen from years of experience, we've seen that for women's economic empowerment, it's not only enough to increase their access to skills and finances and such, but also to address socio-cultural barriers, structural barriers. So these kind of issues such as male perception, maybe that's an area development organizations need to work on as well. And besides male perception, although it came into the recommendation about private sector, but if the study could have also looked at employers' perception or private sector perception on changes in private sector perception or employers' perception on employing women or giving women-friendly workplaces to women, that could have added value to the study. And the study I saw also reverberated other studies which found that increasing women's economic empowerment not only positively affects women's a family's poverty level, but it also improves the family's investments in health and savings. So this has been reflected in this study as well. So we can see that women's economic empowerment is important not only at the personal level, but also at the family and national level. So as the study rightly pointed out, women's economic empowerment can increase the GDP as well. So it is also very important now that also at the national level, a national women's economic empowerment strategy is formulated and followed up on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mehzabin Ahmed Appa, for your reflection as well as some observation, particularly employers' perception, which is one of the key area that you have proposed, and we'll take care about it also in this research. Thank you once again. So thank you one more time for all the discussion, especially Nasima Begum, Member Secretary, Planning Ministry, Gunjan from ILO office, Sanjida Akhtar, Dr. Sanjida Akhtar from Dhaka University, and Laila Appa from Unilever Bangladesh, and Mehzabin Appa from UN Women. Once again, on behalf of SANEM and World Vision, we are really grateful for all of your discussion and contribution. We are moving forward now to get SANEM Executive Director's remarks on the report, as well as some of the highlights what we have captured from the discussion and some of the way forward before we start the open forum discussion. Sir, over to you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. I hope I am audible.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I was listening very attentively the discussion made by the very distinguished panelists. I thought that the discussion was excellent, and especially after the kind of work we did from SANEM, and I think the presentation was very comprehensive. And I'm very glad that the panelists also found that the work useful. At the same time, the panelists also made some very important contribution by highlighting some of the areas and also suggesting for some improvement. I think we'll definitely take note of this. And again, I express my sincere gratitude to the panelists and of course to World Vision. I just thought adding one or two points. It's not that I will be talking about already the report which has been presented, but to mention and highlight and the fact that while you talk about these interventions, and many of those interventions, actually, our study also looked at some of the interventions which evaluated some of the performance of these interventions, how it actually helped women empowerment, and also other development indicators. But most of these micro level interventions, or even some of the interventions we are talking about, how to empower women, need to be supported by the macro environment. So we should not forget that part. So we should also question the overall development policy of the country, whether the overall development policy, overall development objectives are consistent with the kind of interventions we are talking about. So if those policies or those overall economic environment are not really conducive for having these interventions, long lasting, because I fear that many of these effect of these positive interventions may be lost because if they are not supported by, very regular or consistent government policies in different areas. So I just wanted to highlight that part that when you talk about these interventions, we need to see the kind of seriousness and eagerness from the government or the important policymakers to take this agenda forward. Also, when you talk about this economic empowerment, it's not only the economic empowerment we are talking about. We are talking actually about overall women empowerment. It includes, of course, the social aspect, political economy aspect, and of course, the environmental climate change aspect. So I think how women can engage in different areas of development, how effectively they can be engaged, they feel the ownership. It's not that they are at the mercy of male or they are someone is actually empowering them. It's not that. But we need to understand that whether the society or the economy or the political system or whether they are in line to have this women empowerment. So I'm again just conclude by saying that we are sincerely thankful to the panelists, and I'm looking forward to the open discussion too. And we from SANEM, we have been working actually quite a lot on women empowerment and gender issues, and we thought that this work actually the collaboration between SANEM and World Vision would contribute or would add value to the overall literature and the kind of objective we are working for. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Gomez.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful some different perspective also you have brought into this discussion, particularly the policy aspect, economic environment, also focusing on the climate change. Those are obviously key factors to look at into the future course of action. And honestly, we, the development partners, particularly the NGOs, INGOs, corporate, honestly focusing on how we can support an environment where all women will thrive, will grow with their rights and dignity. So those are some areas that we have to keep into our mind while we will expand these research findings into action. Therefore, again, I'm just really thankful, SANEM, for your wonderful deep dive, considering all different aspects through your wonderful field experience. It was wonderful, and all the discussion also appreciated. And we have invited so many other participants here. Now, may I humbly request to raise your hands, and so that I can check who is interested first and second and third, so that we are on time now, so we can proceed with few more discussion from the participant. And we are also happy that from Planning Ministry, Dr. Nurun Nahar, Joint Secretary, she is with us after leaving Nasima Appa. So we are really thankful, Dr. Nurun Nahar, Madam, for your participation. And also, I hope you will take some discussion in the open forum. So I can see at least one hands right away. Let me check who is, I'm not able to see. Anyway, I can see at least raise one hands first. So can I request you to start with
Mr. Benedict.
Okay, Dr. Benedict, he is President of Caritas Asia. May I request Dr. Alo Benedict Rosario, open your video and you can start. Thanks.
Am I audible?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chandan Gomez. Also, thanks to SANEM and also World Vision for this important study. And this study shows us the improvement in the economic aspect as well as beyond that. It touches the human capital and some of the social issues. But I think for sustainable development, beyond this human capital and other capital and economic part, there is also important area, social capital, samajik puji, where relationship, network, forums count. And many kind of empowerment, many aspects of empowerment depend on social capital and samajik puji. So I'm not sure whether there were any focus on that. Related to that, I have already shared a question in the chat box that relate to the migration, trafficking, safety, early marriage, abuse. So all these are there, but that is okay. But the last point that I want to make is the how this economic empowerment or economic improvement and women are effective positively the social capital, which is very important. Even our culture is also kind of a capital if we see in a broad sense. So maybe I will be very interested to know about it if it is already there, or maybe it will be one of the area for focus in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chandan.
Excellent, excellent. Very specific, and this is a very pertinent area of observation, social capital, how we have added into this research or how we can expand into our next course of action, because this is a critical area where wherever we think about women empowerment. Definitely we appreciate your points. So there are no more hands. However, let me request some of the let me check. Yeah, from DFAT, I see Nitul Dewan or Nahil Bhai. Any of you, if you are interested to share, may I kindly request you. Any comments? Okay, then get ready. Maybe later on you can share. By this time, I can see one participant from Asian Development Bank. May I request to share some of your reflection? Okay, maybe you are not ready yet. Then let me also ask, I should not ask actually, that if you feel free to unmute and share any of your thought. I understand that this research is really critical to understand sometime, but we know the women empowerment different aspect, and we are doing some of the aspect, but if you are not willing to share, no worries. But at the final stage, may I request Dr. Nurun Nahar, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Planning, to share some of your thoughts or reflection.
Yes.
Please, madam.
Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you, dear moderator, and thank you for giving me the floor to say a few words. And so far, what I've heard about from the presentation, from the presenter, I think it's a very excellent work on the women issues in the labor force. And I think so far we've heard from the different corners, but how it could be improved, or what are the highlight areas. So as a research work, I think it's an excellent, and I think it can benefit the government, because I was looking at the recommendation section, and I think it's quite comprehensive, and it tried to address, the whole of the the problem as a whole. But I just like to focus on a few issues, and we have to now move in a way that we can be more focused, because the issues about women empowerment and economic development is quite very comprehensive, and is an umbrella. But beneath it, we need to find the threads, the strands, through which we can really start or find the solution to the problems. So yes, the problem has been quite rightly addressed, and how the women empowerment is happening in the in our employment in the government and the private sector, and about the the beneficiary and non-beneficiary comparison. I think it was a very good way to look at the issue. So so what can we do here from a policy perspective? There was some suggestion on that. That government goes by the national planning method, that is top-down planning, I would say. And we have the 5-year planning, and we have the long-term planning, as our members mentioned to you. But that is the plan. But how do I implement the ideas and objectives of the plan in the women's empowerment area? So one tool could be, we do the public investment, that is of the government, based on the 5-year plan objectives. And it's formulated as the annual development program, which is a accumulation of various projects of the different ministries. And all these projects are mostly pro-poor, and we need to achieve some of our national targets in terms of economic development. As a country, we are graduating from the least developing country status to middle income country, and then later we wish to be a developed country. So our vision is there, and then how do we go about it? So we can look at the existing tools. So one is our public investment, and it is based on project based, and I think the researchers have looked into those projects. But how can we improve the projects? So if some recommendation would be there, because government has recognized the issues of women issues in all the projects, but due to so many recent challenges, those facts and figures are most of the time missing in the project documents. So how can we make sure that those informations are included in the project designing stage, based on the current research that you have done here? And what are the indicators? So that would be helpful if there could be some summary of the good indicators. Is it just the income of the women, or is it just the participation rate of the women? How can I know by which indicator I can measure the sustainability of those programs, that are addressing the women's livelihood, employment issues? So if we can just address the recommendation in that way, that would be more helpful. And also, as you know, in our there is from our Minister of Women's and Children Affairs Ministry a guideline to address the project documents so that the gender issues are addressed properly. Although there are many indicators that still, as I said, challenges are there because of our capacity issues, or we need more training, or the understanding of it is not at the same level in all the agencies that are doing these projects. So we need to improve those. But so what are the indicators we can go look for? So that would be very helpful, I think, for a very helpful outcome from this study. And I think the studies are very well done. And as I can see, a lot of discussion has been already done here. And I wish it will be finalized based on the discussion here. And we hope to receive the final reports in Planning Commission so that we can also share it with the ministries and our implementing agencies that carry out the projects on the women empowerment issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Nurun Nahar, Joint Secretary, Minister of Planning, for your commendable some of the guidance. And finally, what you said, we definitely furnish this document and send to you for further use wherever applicable at your level. So thank you. And obviously you have pointed out at least 3 critical areas to understand as well as take forward. One is findings, or the recommendation is nothing until and unless we also find out the solutions. So thanks for that point. At the same time, public investment, how we can put it into some different ways, our future investment area, that private sector or many other public and private sector can be collaborate. What Nasima Appa also emphasized, the collaboration. And the final one, what is the reality in the development is indicator, measurement. Without measurement, we cannot see the progress as well as sustainability. So these are really, I will say, at the very end, you summarize the whole days or the 2 hours discussion together. Thank you, sir, once again for your wonderful time and participation. Okay, we are almost final level of our open forum discussion. I don't see any hands, but we can see some of the questions, queries in the chat box. Our SANEM and our staff taking notes, and we will finalize this report and we will send back to you for further use of this research. And World Vision, we love to collaborate, we love to be partner in the development field in the future. Therefore, once again, thank you very much, all the media house, those who already joined and get all the documents. Please share in the media so that those who could not join, they can see these findings as well as some of the recommendation, valid recommendation. Yeah, I can see the last hand, independence, either print or television
Independent
media.
TV,
Yeah, okay, go ahead, sir.
আমি আপনাদের প্রেজেন্টেশন পেপার থেকে দেখার চেষ্টা করেছি আসলে এখানে যারা এন্টারপ্রেনিউর আছে তাদের ব্যাপারে কিছু বলা হয়েছে কিনা, আমি আসলে সেটা খুঁজে পেলাম না। আমার আসলে একটা কোয়েশ্চেন ছিল, সেটা হচ্ছে যে আমরা সবসময় এখন দেখছি শুনছি যে আমাদের যে উদ্যোক্তা, নারী উদ্যোক্তা আছে, তারা মানে এই করোনার সময় অনেকেই আসলে ঝরে পড়ছে, তারা আর মানে উঠে দাঁড়াতে পারছে না। তো আপনাদের কাছে এরকম কোনো ফাইন্ডিংস আছে কিনা যে এই করোনার সময়, এই চলতি বছরের সেকেন্ড ওয়েভে কত পার্সেন্ট নারী উদ্যোক্তা আসলে তারা তাদের বিজনেস রান করতে পারেনি, আর কত পার্সেন্ট হচ্ছে যে তারা লোনের জন্য অ্যাপ্লাই করেও লোন পায়নি? এই 2টা জায়গায় আপনাদের ফাইন্ডিংস আছে কিনা? আর আমার আরেকটা কোয়েশ্চেন হচ্ছে যে নাসিমা বেগম ম্যামের কাছে, যে আমরা তো সবসময় মানে এখন তো দেখাই যাচ্ছে যে নারী উদ্যোক্তারা তারা লোন পাচ্ছে না, বারবারই কথা বলে, তারা বলে যে তাদের পেপারস অনেক জটিলতা আছে, তাদেরকে নানা অজুহাত দেখি, যেটা তারা বলে যে অজুহাত দেখি তাদের আসলে লোন দেওয়া হয় না, এই লোন যে তাদের দেওয়া হয় না এটার হারও অনেক বেশি। তো সেক্ষেত্রে আপনাদের কোনো পরিকল্পনা আছে কিনা যে এই নারীরা কিভাবে ঋণ পেতে পারে, বা কোনো সহজভাবে কিভাবে ঋণ পেতে পারে, এরকম কোনো পরিকল্পনা আপনাদের আছে কিনা? ধন্যবাদ।
ধন্যবাদ আপা আপনাকে। নাসিমা আপা আসলে এই মুহূর্তে নাই, আমাদের প্ল্যানিং মিনিস্ট্রি থেকে ডক্টর নুরুন নাহার আপা আছেন, আপনি যদি কোনো কিছু শেয়ার করতে
হ্যাঁ,
চান।
ধন্যবাদ। হ্যাঁ, আমি ধন্যবাদ এই প্রশ্নটির জন্য। খুবই ভেরি একটি ভেরি একটি টাইমলি কোয়েশ্চেন। আমাদের যে নারী উদ্যোক্তার এর বিষয়ে যেটা হচ্ছে যে আসলে কনসার্ন মিনিস্ট্রি এগুলো করার কথা, যেটা হচ্ছে আমার ব্যাংকিং পলিসি, আমার লোন সহজীকরণ যে বিষয়গুলো আছে, এখানে বাংলাদেশ ব্যাংক এদের করে থাকার কথা। এবং হয়তো আমাদের 5 এরিয়ানে কিছু হয়তো বলা আছে, আমি যত মনে পড়ে যে এদের রেট যে উইমেন্স পার্টিসিপেশন, হ্যাঁ, এবং উইমেন ইন দ্য লোন ডিসবার্সমেন্টে এটা মনে বাড়ানোর বিষয় একটা ইন্ডিকেটর আছে। বাট ওভারঅল এই পলিসিগুলো আসলে কনসার্ন মিনিস্ট্রি, যেমন মিনিস্ট্রি অফ ফাইন্যান্স, বাংলাদেশ ব্যাংক, তারা করে থাকে। আর যেটা হলো যে যেটা প্ল্যানিং কমিশন করে, ইন্ডিভিজুয়াল প্রজেক্ট যেগুলো মিনিস্ট্রি গুলো করে for livelihood, livelihood or income generation, all different kinds of the training through credit, microcredit, সেখানে যেহেতু women ফোকাসটি করা হয়, তো সেখানে হচ্ছে বিষয়টা আলাদা। কিন্তু পাবলিক ও প্রাইভেট ফিনান্সিয়াল ইনস্টিটিউশন থেকে লোনের বিষয়টা আসলে হয়তো কনসার্ন সেক্টর দেখা উচিত। তবে প্ল্যানিং কমিশন এই বিষয়ে হয়তো ওই মিনিস্ট্রিদের সাথে কথা বলতে পারবা, যখন ওই মিনিস্ট্রিদের প্রজেক্ট গুলো আসে আমরা হয়তো এই বিষয়গুলোকে ভেরি কনসার্নের সাথে হয়তো আশা করি দেখবে। থ্যাংক ইউ।
Thank you, madam, for your clarifying some of the area that government is taking care of. Saima Appa, do you like to add something? Yeah.
Sure. We can provide some comments in connection to the comments that the panelists have provided. First of all, if I just humbly want to add what Nur Nahar Appa was telling, because when we are talking about the government projects and annual development programs, I think one of the key instruments to link those projects to our recommendation on the recommendation provided by the researchers could be the gender budget. Now, the fact remains that MOCA and Ministry of Finance Division, they play a critical role in the gender budget. So I think when we are talking about, because we have also had some research agenda coming up with Bangladesh Mohila Parishad, and we have conducted some research, and the findings from the research, I can add one thing, is it's very important that when we are looking at the gender budget, we can make the allocation gender sensitive by looking at the qualitative and quantitative goals. So generally we look at the amount of money that is spent, but rather than doing that, our focus should be more target oriented. So whether we have been able to achieve the target of the SDGs and how far which of the ministries have been able to achieve or narrow the gender gap, that could be one criteria. And for that, regular monitoring and evaluation of the program based on a gender lens, that can be something that can be really important, and that can really play a crucial role in terms of aligning the annual development programs with the gender sensitive agendas. So that is one point I would like to mention. Secondly, the point when we are talking about the issue of, I would like to highlight the point that has been made by Mr. Gunjan, that is like related to some of the points. Like one point was like the resources, whether we should have include the resources like the skill-based resources or access to skill, access to education. So the fact remains is like we already have information, or we already have incorporated in our index access to land, access to house, access to livestock, access to credit. Now, in generally what happens, all of these factors, and on top of it, like the access to skill, these can be very highly correlated with each other. So one can often serve as a proxy for the other. So in generally, they go very closely together. So that's why from that point of view, I think we cannot have all of the indicators, but some of the indicators that we have chosen, I think it more or less suffices the purpose that we are thinking about. Now, the second point is like the combining the research findings with the recommendation. Here, I would like to add one very important point that Dr. Salim Raihan has pointed, that there has to be a link between the macro and the micro aspects with the macro policy. And from that point of view, when we are talking about school dropout rate, when we are talking about women empowerment, when we are talking about gender-based violence, we must keep in mind that making women empowerment only will not actually have an impact on the school dropout rate, unless and until we can link it to the broader development goals of the country. And that's why our recommendation is like, it is not only the micro level evaluation, micro level intervention, but we have to go further beyond. And from that point of view, it is important to have some specific government programs targeted towards that. And having said that, এখানে আমি নীরা আপার কথাটা একটু বলতে চাচ্ছি, সেটা হচ্ছে যে উনি যে পয়েন্টটা বলেছেন, তিনি জেন্ডার বেসড ভায়োলেন্স সম্পর্কে আমাদের যে স্কোরটা সেখানকার সম্পর্কে কিছু ওনার মন্তব্য ছিল। সেখানে একটা জিনিস আমি একটু হাইলাইট করতে চাই, যে যেখানে আমাদের যে 3টি প্রোগ্রাম নিয়ে আমরা দেখতে চেয়েছি, সেই 3টি প্রোগ্রামের মধ্যে 2টো প্রোগ্রামে কিন্তু আমরা জেন্ডার বেসড ভায়োলেন্স, নারীর প্রতি সহিংসতা, সেটা কিন্তু যথেষ্ট কম পেয়েছি। কিন্তু একটি প্রোগ্রামে নারীর প্রতি সহিংসতার যে ইন্ডেক্সটা, যে সংখ্যাটা, সেই সংখ্যা যদি আমরা দেখি এটা কি ধরনের প্রোগ্রাম, এটা কিন্তু আলট্রা পুয়ারদের জন্য প্রোগ্রাম। এবং অনেক ক্ষেত্রে অন্যান্য দেশের গবেষণাতেও দেখা গেছে যে যখন আলট্রা পুয়ার কোনো গ্রুপ বা ভেরি পুয়ার গ্রুপকে নিয়ে, মার্জিনালাইজ গ্রুপকে নিয়ে কথা বলা হয়, তখন সেখানে নারীর ক্ষমতায়ন যে সরাসরি নারীর প্রতি সহিংসতা কমাতে সহায়ক হবে, সেটার কিন্তু একটা মিক্সড রেজাল্ট আমরা দেখতে পাই। ইভেন ভারতেও স্টাডি রয়েছে, সেখানেও দেখা গেছে। সুতরাং এই রেজাল্টটাতে আমরা খুব একটা সারপ্রাইজ নই, কারণ women economic empowerment different income strataতে different গ্রুপের উপরে কিন্তু জেন্ডার বেসড ভায়োলেন্সের উপর ভিন্ন ভিন্ন ধরনের এফেক্ট আসতে পারে। সেই কারণেই আমাদের আসলে বিভিন্ন গ্রুপগুলোকে আলাদাভাবে পর্যবেক্ষণ করা দরকার, এবং মাইক্রো লেভেলের স্টাডিগুলো সেই কারণে ভীষণ গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। একটা কথা বলে আমি শুধু শেষ করব, সেই কথাটা হচ্ছে যে আমরা অনেক কথা কিন্তু বললাম যে অর্থনীতিতে নারীর অবদানের বিষয়টা, আমরা আমাদের ইকোনমেট্রিক স্টাডির কথা বললাম, কিন্তু আমরাও কিন্তু আমাদের স্টাডিতে একটা জিনিস ভুলে গেছি, বা আমাদের অর্থনীতিতে আমরা ভুলে যাই, সেটা হচ্ছে নারীর অপ্রদর্শিত শ্রম, যেটা কিন্তু আসলে জিডিপিতে আমরা যে জিডিপির হিসাবগুলো নিই, সেখানে জাতীয় আয় কিন্তু অন্তর্ভুক্ত করা হয় না। আর আমাদের সানেমেরই স্টাডি রয়েছে, যেখানে আমরা দেখেছি যে নারীর অপ্রদর্শিত যে শ্রমটা, সেই শ্রমটাকে আমরা যদি আমরা গণনায় আনি, সেটা কিন্তু একটা বিশাল অঙ্কের একটা সংখ্যা হয়ে দাঁড়ায়, এবং সেটাকে যদি আমরা গণনায় এনে যদি আমরা জিডিপিতে সেটাকে অন্তর্ভুক্ত করতাম, তখন কিন্তু নারীর ক্ষমতায়ন এবং নারী শ্রমবাজারের অংশগ্রহণের সাথে জিডিপির যে সম্পর্ক, সেটাতে আরো শক্তিশালী আমরা কিন্তু ভূমিকা দেখতে পারতাম। কিন্তু স্বাভাবিকভাবে যেটা হয় যে জিডিপির যে তথ্যটা, সেই তথ্যটাতে কিন্তু নারীর অপ্রদর্শিত শ্রমটা গণনা করা হয় না। সুতরাং এই বিষয়গুলো কিন্তু আমাদের মনে রাখতে হবে, যে নারীর ক্ষমতায়ন বা নারী শ্রমবাজারে অংশগ্রহণ, নারীর অবদান, সেগুলোর মধ্যে কিন্তু অনেক কিছু রয়েছে, সেগুলো পরিসংখ্যানের ফাঁক দিয়ে কিন্তু অনেক সময় আমরা ধরতে পারি না। সেই জিনিসগুলো কিন্তু আমাদের ধরার দরকার আছে। আমি মাহাতাবকে বলবো, দু একটা ছোটখাটো পয়েন্ট রয়েছে যেগুলো নিয়ে সে হয়তো একটু অ্যাড করতে পারে। ওভার টু ইউ।
ম্যাডাম, থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ ম্যাডাম। আমি জাস্ট একটু কুইকলি পয়েন্ট দিতে যাচ্ছি। প্রথমত যেই ছিল সেটা হচ্ছে, দেখুন আমাদের যেই রিসার্চ ফাইন্ডিং বা যে আমরা শুরু করেছি এখানে, তার কয়েকটা কিন্তু বেসড অন হোয়াট উই ফাউন্ড। So particularly whatever actually information we are coming we put forward here, actually based on the research finding that we have found in the study. For example, the school dropout rate, as you can recall it, that the school dropout rate is high for beneficiary and non-beneficiary group. So particularly maybe the programs are not contributing to reducing the school dropout rate. So maybe we need some bigger intervention from the government side or other stakeholders to reduce the school dropout rate. So, and it is the government actually who can step up the game on to actually reduce school dropout rate. It is not
Mahatab, your voice is not that clear. Can you please adjust your microphone?
So is it clear now?
It's better now.
Okay. So actually, what I meant is that particularly reducing the school dropout rate or such interventions, it is not possible for the individual programs or projects to have significant long-term implications on reducing dropout rate. It is the government who will have to play the bigger role. So that's why actually we pointed out the school dropout rate, as we found in our study that there are not very significant implication on the reducing the school dropout rate between the beneficiary and non-beneficiary groups. Another one is that we talked about the gender-based violence because in our study we didn't find any significant difference between the beneficiary and non-beneficiary group. Rather, for the UPG that the violence they are facing is higher than the non-beneficiary group. So regarding another thing that we have found in our study, we mentioned it in the study, but we didn't put it in our recommendation, is the access to mass media or access to ICT. So particularly, you see that women, whether it is beneficiary or non-beneficiary group, they have less access to ICT or they have less access to mass media. So actually, since they have less access to ICT or less access to mass media, they are getting less information. Or for example, it could be regarding nutrition, it could be regarding other important aspects, but they are getting less information than that they could have actually received. And also regarding another recommendation we put regarding the value chain, actually that recommendation came from the what we learned from the NSCC, Navojatra and UPG program. All these programs actually they focus on integrating the women with value chain, and that is one of the drivers why we have seen women are benefiting from this program. And that's why we particularly mentioned that if the private sector can be engaged and women can be engaged more, it can be more strengthened, the women engagement in the value chain, then actually women economic empowerment, attaining women economic empowerment will be much easier. Lastly, I would like to mention the reply to the Mr. Benedict comments on social capital. Particularly is that we actually talked about social capital in our report at several places. And when we talk about women economic empowerment, social dimension is very crucial. The social awareness, participation from the local stakeholders, like the role that religious leaders like imam or captains they can play. You see, they have bigger roles to play, and they can motivate or they can play significantly alter the views at the micro level. So we talked, when in our report we talked about it at several places in our report. But nonetheless, all your comments and all your suggestions have benefited our understanding, and definitely will, when we revise, our recommendation part or other parts, we'll definitely take them in the
right.
paper. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Saimapa and Mahatab Bhai, for your detail and some of the clarifying answer to the questions by different audience. And Dr. Nurunahar, Appa, you raised your hands. Maybe you will have to add something. Your hands already raised.
Yes, just to complement what I think Professor Bipasha was saying, yes, about the gender budget. Yes, that is just one of a tool, to mainstream the gender issues. But that's like, I would say, ex post work, like when the budget is already prepared and the finance is allocated, then we find out how much of what is going to the gender issues. But we need to, to address all the issues that have been recommended in studies, we need to work at the very grassroots or ex ante, so that, in the government's project that are in the interventions to these problems, as well as the other part that is not government, that is the INGOs, NGOs, private sector, they can start working on these issues at the very beginning. And one is that business as usual. We're going about the problems. But on top of that, what are the things we need to really look into? And I think this study could help us because the way they have addressed the beneficiary groups and non-beneficiary groups and the male perception, it might add some lights about what interventions that we can take in our projects. Because as we're speaking, this ADP that we are implementing, Government of Bangladesh, it's a huge budget, and we have about more than 1,000 investment projects that are being implemented by at least 58 ministries divisions. And the study rightly recommends that it should be in all the programs, not just government and non-government, about the economic empowerment. But if the government can have the leverage, I would like to add, then what can we do? So that is the most important thing. If we can have the policy brief, not just the report, to share to all the concerned ministries and the agencies to highlight on the new findings, that I hope that will shed light, because time is money. The more projects we come, the more better quality projects we come up with, the better will be the implementation, the better will be the outcome. So that is, I hope we can work on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, madam, for your further elaboration of the future step, and we obviously discuss with your ministry with all those suggestions and how we can contribute together for the betterment of this country. That would be our motive. Thank you once again. We are almost done. Now, may I request our National Director, Suresh Bartlett, to say your concluding remarks, and through your concluding remarks, we will close this webinar. Once again, thank you, everyone. Please go ahead, Suresh.
Yeah, thanks, Chandan, and thank you all for your participation. I think it's been a rich discussion. I want to thank all our distinguished guests and certainly all of the participants as well for joining us this afternoon for this session. Certainly, I think I've benefited from the discussion, and I'm sure all of us have learned from what has been discussed this afternoon. I think we are all on the same page when it comes to the empowerment of women, and we recognize the fact that there's no way a country progresses by leaving 50% of its population behind. That is critical, and therefore the importance of this cannot be overstated. I think the other thing again that is amazing in South Asia and in Bangladesh is the fact that we have always had women leadership at the highest levels, and yet tended to struggle in this important area of bringing along all of the other women as well to contribute to the economy. And I hope we can change that here going forward through this research and the recommendations and all that was spoken about as well. And I think one of the keys really is the way as to how the research is great, but if it stays as a research, then certainly we won't make progress. And so I look forward to seeing the action plans and as to how we can all come together and coordinate and collaborate and be more intentional in addressing this issue going forward. I like the fact that we talked about, and certainly we all know women's participation is the main driver for this transformation, but the importance of male participation and perceptions as well. And this is something that we constantly keep talking about at World Vision and throughout all of our programs. I think the other important aspect is the fact that we see the difference between beneficiaries and non-beneficiaries. And so the issue is how do we ensure that we can scale this and ensure that it touches all segments of the society and country as well. And then also to ensure its sustainability going forward as well, which is critical. And that's where I think the whole aspect of the policy aspect, both in terms of change and implementation and scale, is also critical, I think, in terms of this discussion and making a difference moving forward. So yeah, so it's certainly thank you everybody once again, and I wish you all the very best as we try to come together and address the situation. Certainly at World Vision, this is paramount, both within the organization and certainly through all of our projects. But I constantly keep reminding our teams, it's not just good to to do it with the beneficiaries, we need to make sure that all of the non-beneficiaries are also part of this process as well. So I wish you all the best, and I look forward to seeing the evidence of the results that comes out of this research as well. Thank you, and may God bless you all.
Thank you, Brother Suresh, for your closing comments, and a big thanks obviously to SANEM authority, all the researchers, as well as today's distinguished guest. We love to work with you in the near future. Thank you, and bye.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.